I am a huge fan of Claude Code, and today I want to show you two ways that I use it that don't involve writing code. Most of the time, we think a lot about these agentic IDEs or these agentic tools as helping us write code, but I find it really useful at a couple of things. One, planning out what I'm going to build, and two, dropping me into a new code base and being able to explore and modify code bases that I'm unfamiliar with. So here we are all over on the documentation for Claude Code. You could say Anthropic's agentic coding tool that lives in your terminal and helps you turn ideas into code faster than ever before. Now, again, I just did a video on this. There's now the ability to use Claude Code on the web and on iOS, and that is for particular scenarios. I went through that, being able to fix bugs quickly or add new features. But if we are starting a project from scratch, or we are trying to understand an unfamiliar code base, this is a really great tool for doing that. So I'm going to show you those two use cases today. And I'll start with being able to explore an unfamiliar code base. So here I have the Spring Pet Clinic. You can download this over on the Spring Projects GitHub repo, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. So Claude basically lives in the terminal. You can open up a terminal and run Claude on a particular project, and you will be taken into this interactive mode where you can use the agent. You can also have IDE extensions. So I believe there's one coming out for Visual Studio Code. There's also one for IntelliJ. So right here, I can go ahead and open up an instance of Claude Code, and that'll drop me into the CLI. Here you go. Welcome back, Dan. Here's what you've been doing. Here is something you can start doing. So again, as I said, really good at writing code, but I use it in a couple different scenarios. First off, I want to understand this code base. Maybe I'm brand new to this code base. I don't know anything about it. I can remember as a junior developer being dropped into these large, massive applications with all of these documents that I had to read through to try to understand what was going on. This allows me to really expedite that and get familiar with the code base. So I will say this, both examples that we're going to use today use something called plan mode. So if you shift tab into plan mode, this says, hey, we are not writing any code. We are strictly going to do some analysis, whether it's finding out what's going on in this code base or planning a new one, right? So what I want to do is just get a high-level overview. So can you tell me more about this project at a high level? So we're going to ask it at a high level, what does this project consist of? So it's going to come back, it's going to think, it's going to read all of the files in the project. It's going to go through, kind of index that. You see it's searching for patterns. So it's using some command line tools to kind of grep that out, using bash, find, figure out what's going on in this application. So it's going to collect all that context. And with that context, then it can put together a thought based on what you just asked it, which was give me a high-level overview of this project. So it has all that context. It's going to come up with a summary for us and tell us what's going on. So if we look at this, we can see Spring Pet Clinic at a high level. This is an official sample application from the Spring team that demonstrates Spring Boot best practices. Here's its purpose. It's a veterinary clinic management application that tracks pet owners, pets, veterinarians, visits, etc. The technology stack is Spring Boot 4, so it's on the cutting edge. That's not out for a couple months or a month at this point. Java 25, built with Maven and Gradle. Here are some of the dependencies. So it's using Spring Data JPA, Timeleaf, Spring Validation, caching, Bootstrap for the UI, and some database, has H2, MySQL, and Postgres. Then it says, here's the architecture. You can see owners, vets, systems, etc. Code quality, Nullaway, static analysis for null safety, J-Specify annotations. So I could read through the rest of this, but something just caught my eye there. I know this, but I know it's coming in Spring Boot 4. But maybe a follow-up for me might be something like, what is J-Specify and Nullaway? Can you give me an example of where it's used in the application, right? So I want to find out more about this thing. Maybe it's not a public thing. I know J-Specify is, but maybe it's like an internal library. I want to find out more about this thing that I don't know. So again, I'm trying to find out more about this unfamiliar project that I don't know anything about. So I'll explain what these are. What is J-Specify? I'll explain what these are and show you real examples from the code base. So again, it's going through, it's trying to like find things that is related to that. And if you go up here, you see J-Specify, what are they? It's a standard set of annotations for expressing nullness, null safety in Java code. It provides annotations like nullable, non-null, and null mark. These were previous annotations in the Spring framework that we would use. And Nullaway is a static analysis tool from Uber that runs during compilation to catch these null pointer exceptions before we hit runtime. How do they work together? Here's some real world examples. So we're using at null mark at a package level. We're using things like nullable here in the owner. So we're saying that is nullable. And then we have nullable as a type, return type here from a database entry and more. So this is really good. I caught something there that I wasn't really sure about and I asked it more about. This is a really good step. Now, I want to take this a little bit further and say, okay, well, I've learned about kind of a high-level overview. We've learned about some part of this that I wasn't really sure about, which is J-Specify and Nullaway. What if I wanted to dive a little bit deeper and I wanted to say, can you tell me some of the entry points into this application? So as a Spring developer, I know what some of these entry points are, but I might not know all of them. If I'm a non-Spring developer, I might not know that there's like an application main method, right? So what this is going to do is going to go through, look at our code base and find out some of the entry points for this application. As it starts to dig through here, it should kind of tell us like, here are the different entry points. And entry points are a really good way to kind of get familiar with an unfamiliar code base. Because if you don't know where to start, it's hard to like step through, right? I need to know like as a user, where does this application start? What are some of the public endpoints that the user is going to go through? So if we look at this, we see that there's a main application entry point, which is public static void main. Here's the Spring application.run. And there are some HTTP endpoints. These are in the form of controllers. This application has 6 controllers handling web requests. And it goes into to show you all of the controllers and the endpoints that are available. And then it goes in, here's a H2 console, and then it gives you some key characteristics. And sometimes you can ask, like, maybe give me a summary of this. However you want to phrase this. This is really up to you. We are not writing code. You can ask all the questions you want, which is really, really fun to do. So this helps me get familiar with the unfamiliar code bases. I've even taken this a step further. So when you are running something like Claude Code, you have the idea of slash commands. There are a bunch of built-in slash commands, and you can create your own. So I'm going to show you one that I built based around exploring unfamiliar code bases. But if you're interested in this, we'll go into this a little bit deeper in a future video and build out some slash commands together. So slash commands can live in a project. They can live at a global level. In this case, I just put it in this project. And I have a slash command called explore. So this explore has a description, hint, some allowed tools so I don't have to keep saying like, yes, allow this. And what it's going to go to is give you depth. I either want a shallow, a standard, or a deep exploration of this project. And by default, we are going to use shallow. And so there's a bunch of important information of what we want to try and get out of this. So I want to find a project overview. I want architecture and structure. I want complexity analysis. Like, how complex is this code base? Documentation assessment, dependency analysis. What dependencies are in here? So for Java project, run the MVM dependency tree. What does testing look like? What does code quality look like? How about the version control analysis? The nice thing about this is I did not write this. I did some iterating on this with Claude from the web. And I said, here, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build a custom explore command. These are the things I'm interested in. Also, what can you give me some thoughts on like what you might add to this? And so I did some back and forth with this and came up with this in probably about 10 minutes. So now I have a custom command. So from the terminal, I'm just showing you a different way to do this. Like from the terminal, I can drop into here, and now I can run this custom command called explore. It's going to go off and follow that custom command instructions that I gave it. It's going to go through and do all of the things. And at the end of the day, I asked it to output this to a file. So I could see an example of this here. So we see the executive summary. Technology stack is this. Here's the complexity score, low to moderate complexity. Test coverage, health assessment, excellent, because it takes in like how well is it documented? Are there tests? How is the activity on the source on the repository going, right? So it does like some breakdown of that. And then it goes into key findings and notable technologies and an application overview. So this, for me, again, I cannot stress this enough. One of the biggest things that gave me anxiety about being a junior engineer who didn't think he knew anything, and I probably didn't, right, was getting put on a project, and there's all these like senior engineers or people who are much smarter than me writing code against this project, and I don't know anything about it, and I want to contribute to it, but the documentation is a lot, and I don't know if it's up to date, and I gotta like figure out how this thing works. This is a really good starting point for that. So that's number one, but both of these use something called plan mode. So that's number one. Let's take a look at number two. I'm gonna create a new project, and I'm not doing this to sell you a book, but I'm talking about my book here because it's coming out soon. But in the book, I talked about something specific, which was being able to celebrate the wins you have as a developer, no matter how small they are. And I think this is really important. So I haven't done this over my entire career. I wish I would have. No matter where you are in your journey, I think it's important to like keep a document. Like this is a win, no matter how small it is, and explain it, because you could use these things on resumes, on things that you might need later in life. And so what we're going to do, the only reason I brought that up is because I want to build a quick app using plan mode around this idea of like a wins document, right? So I am not starting with Claude Code CLI from like bare bones scratch. No matter whether I'm using Java or using Vue and Nuxt, like I'm using the tools that are very good at bootstrapping my application. I'm not asking Claude to go out and bootstrap it. And the reason I'm not doing that is because whatever it's been trained on is up to a certain point, right? And it may not have like the latest and greatest. And I wanted to like create a very specific version with a very set of specific dependencies. And so for me, like start.spring.io, that's the place I'm going to do that. So I'm going to say dev.danvega. I'll create an artifact called wins. We'll use JDK 25. This is really just going to start with the web support. We'll see what else we come up with during planning mode. We can add those dependencies later. So from there, I can generate a new project called wins, and we'll go ahead and open that up in Claude Code. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up Claude Code here, and we'll say yes. And again, we are going to shift tab into plan mode. This is very important. I find that I run into a lot less issues when I go into plan mode. And so plan mode is, again, it's not going to write any kind of code until you have kind of verified the plan that it is created. So what we can do here is we can iterate back and forth. We can have it come up with a plan, and then we can make some changes to those plans. We can get a plan ready before we start writing code. This is what we do as engineers anyway, right? We don't just say, oh, you want us to build a wins document? Okay, I'll start typing. Like you really try to figure out the requirements for the project before you start writing any code. And so we're going to do that today here. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my voice command here to like type this out so that I don't have to type everything. All right, I want to create a daily devs win application. This is a web app where developers can log their daily coding victories, no matter how small, track learning streaks, and share wins with their team. Think of this as a gratitude journal meets GitHub activity tracker, but for all kinds of developer achievements. So you see that was much easier than having to go ahead and type this out. I love using dictation for this. So we got this, and now we're going to hit enter. And again, if I were to do this in the past without something like plan mode, it would just go off and start writing things. And then I would look and I would see the things that they're doing and I would go, oh, I actually didn't want to do it that way. I had a different thought on how that would go. And then I would like have to back out and like start with some new things. So the other thing here is it's really nice that it has some ways to ask you some questions now. So, hey, what technology stack would you prefer for the front end? So I'm going to say something else. I would like Spring MVC with Java Template Engine, so JTE. Okay, what is the back end? So this should have read this directory. Now, one thing we didn't do is run an init command, which gives Claude a little bit more context as to what it's doing. So that's why I assume it's not doing that. So, so we're using Spring Boot, Spring MVC. What is the database? Yeah, Postgres sounds good. I'll use that. Do we want to have GitHub integration, team reactions, public profiles? Maybe a public profile. I don't need any of the other stuff right now. And so that should be good. And then I'll go ahead and submit our answers. So now it's going to go through and take those answers. This is kind of new, actually, though, the ability for it to ask you questions back. Again, we're all trying to do the same thing here. We're trying to come up with a plan before we write any code. This is going to save you in so many areas. So time, for one. 2, tokens, because we're not writing a bunch of code and retracting and then writing more, etc. So here it says, okay, here's the plan I have for this application, daily devs win. So we're going to start with win. We're going to have a config, controller, model, service, DTO, JTE. So right off the bat, there's a couple ways to address this, but right off the bat, one of the things I see that is we are kind of organizing our code structure in a certain way. We're using this called package by layer. And I actually would rather do this in a package by feature. So right away, I'm going to come down and say, no, keep planning. I would like to organize our code using a package by feature structure, right? So one of the ways that you can alleviate this too is I usually run a /init command, which creates a claude.md file. And in there, I have specific things that I talk about. Use this type of organizational structure. If you need to use a client, use the REST client over the REST template. If you need to pick a database, here's the database type that I want. I alleviated that step today just to kind of get through this quicker, but that's how I would do it. So now we can see that our project structure looks like this. We are packaging by feature, not by layer. So we get into that. Here's the bootstrap for it. Here's the database layer. It's actually decided to use Flyway for our migrations, which I love. Authentication. So we're going to use Spring Security for this. Here's a feature. Here's a streak feature, a profile, a dashboard, and so on. So I'm not going to actually build this out today. Maybe we could do that in a future video if you wanted. But what I want to stress here is that plan mode in these two scenarios is really important. And for me, this is really what opened up the idea of a pair programming with an agent like Claude, is because now I can plan this out. I have an idea. We can go ahead and do this, and then we can iterate on it from it further. So I use it for this. I use it for exploring new code bases, and hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you learned something new today. If you did, leave me a comment. Leave me a comment below, and let me know if you're using Claude Code, if you're using plan mode like this. And if you want to see some more things, I'd love to dive into some future videos on things like agents and custom slash commands and skills and things like that. So yeah, hope you found this useful. Just thought I'd share how I'm using Claude Code and really how it's been able to help me be more productive at the things that I'm doing. With that, if you did learn something new today, friends, do me a big favor, leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, happy coding.